Go ahead and get started. All in order. Roll call, please, Deb.
Well, I was sort already. Commissioner Knapp. Here. McCaffrey,
Here.
Whitehouse,
Here.
Moyer, here, Shalay, here, Sarner.
Here. Any additions or deletions from the agenda tonight?
None from staff.
Any members of the public wish to speak on non-agenda items? We are cruising along, going to the consideration of last month's minutes. Any comments, or can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting?
I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of December 5th, 2022 as presented. I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Knapp,
Yes.
McCaffrey,
Yes.
Whitehouse,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Shalay,
Yes.
Sarner.
Yes. All right, the business items. First agenda item is a site plan review for 7846th Street. I believe staff will have a presentation and the applicants will also have a presentation. It's not a public forum, so we don't have to do any conflict of interest or ex parte, but I'll go ahead and ask anyway. Does anybody have anything they want to disclose before we get going on the presentations?
No, sir, no.
Oh, good, just me. It's very brief. If you all have looked at the site plan review, I work for a company that was specified as one of the architectural vendors. It's the stone specification on here. I'm a salaried salesperson of Edward Stone. We have not submitted any bids. We have not won or been awarded any bids on this. An architectural spec is basically a recommendation of something the architect wants to see. So if this does move forward, I don't stand to gain financially from it. So this is strictly in full disclosure for tonight. Everyone's good with that?
Oh, sure.
I will not make comments. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started whenever we start ready with the staff presentation.
We're, excuse me, with our technology, tonight, I'm loading up a PowerPoint presentation for the staff presentation. And, our senior planner, Paul Whalen's actually going to present the staff report. So, Paul, if you want to take it away, I will get your PowerPoint slide up here just as fast as the technology allows me.
Good evening, thank you, Cody. The item before you tonight is a site plan for the new Smoking Cowboy marijuana retail sales facility in the town of Wellington.
Go ahead. I'll keep it high level and I'll get the slides up there in just a moment.
Tom Donnelly with Donovan Consultants LLC is here on behalf of the owners. The applicant is seeking approval for a site plan located in the south central area of the town. The site is addressed as 7846th Street. The site is zoned C3, mixed use commercial, and is comprised of approximately 0.872 gross total acres. The applicant proposes to remodel and expand an existing facility to accommodate his proposed marijuana retail sales business. This site is located east of 6th Street and west of I-25 in the vicinity of the Savannah Lane and 6th Street intersection.
Real close.
The site is sat vacant and dilapidated for at least last 5 years. There is an existing 1,390 square foot building on site with other site amenities. Let's see. Yeah. You'll show the location, there you go. South Central, that's, for those that observe the PowerPoint, that's the South Central location. You click it one more time, Cody. That's, click it once. Yep, that is our site for those that can see the PowerPoint. Kind of an odd shaped property, approximately 3/4 of an acre. The property was annexed in 2022. The land annexation and subsequently zoned C3 mixed commercial uses. The 6th Street right of way was expanded with a 10-foot right of way dedication and a 9-foot utility easement also granted during the annexation process. On the next slide, let's show that in greater detail. One click to it. That's 10-foot right of way, and then the 9-foot easement. And the possible location of the existing structure is in brown on the north end of the property. Even with those, the right of way, 10-foot right of way dedication and the easement, the existing building as well as the proposed building, and you'll see a footprint of that in just a few minutes. But the new building will comply with setback standards for the reconfigured lot. And I believe with the dedication, it comes from approximately 0.7275 net acres. So the Smoking Cowboy project began in June of 2022 when the site was annexed. A little bit of background and history on it. Town improved provided utilities and provided services are existing and available in 6th Street to provide for this site. I believe the site was previously Northern Colorado Water offices. And they were served by a meter provided by Northern Colorado Water, which they abandoned and probably disconnected. So everything is going to be provided by the town of Wellington. The applicant proposes improving the site to be compliant with the current town land use code and building standards and building code. Next site will show the existing property. There's the various views and so forth. And again, like I say, this is an existing structure. It is sat vacant and unused for a number of years. So I guess we would say this is a welcome opportunity to improve the property and turn it something aesthetically pleasing and useful to the town. But as you can see, this is a 1,390 square foot structure. They're going to partially demolish it and expand on and so forth. And again, there's some existing structures and improvements that have sat unused and vacant for a number of years. Next slide, I guess, Cody. This is pretty much our site, I-25 right away to the west. And again, north is to the left, 6th Street. And that shows 6th Street improved to the new right of way property line. You can click on it, Cody. There's about 2,200,000 square feet of impervious drive, parking, and so forth to be proposed on the site. Drainage basin, which is existing, will be improved. And again, all this will be brought to current town code. And our landscape, and I believe we have approximately 15,000 square feet of landscaping proposed for that site as well. So 38% of the site is proposed for landscaping, 57% is impervious area, including the building. Approximately 5% is going to actually be the building footprint. Let's see. I think the next one, Cody, we can click on access. And again, this is site plan. Click on it, Cody. One. There you go. It's going to be right in and left in, full service at the main entrance. Click it again, Cody. And right out left out, again, at the main entrance, full service at that entrance again, and we're gonna have a right out only on the northern drive-through lane, going north. There'll be on-site, pole lights, there'll be wall-mounted scout lights, for security purposes around the building and so forth. Like I say, the existing facilities will be expanded and upgraded to meet town code.
Mr. Whalen, did you want me to speak to the public road improvements briefly?
Yes, please.
I wanted to highlight something real quick. The applicant has been very diligent in working with our town engineering department regarding Sixth Street. As Mr. Whalen alluded to a moment ago, when this property was annexed, the applicant was required to dedicate additional right of way and easements to match the Sixth Street corridor on the east side of the road there with the existing north of the site, like the used to be days, and that's the Quality Inn. So they've done that. They're also required to widen the road to match that same section on the east side. And as part of this consideration, a lot of thought was given to the accesses onto and off of this site. There's one existing full turn movement entrance or driveway. And that's proposed to, I think it's shifting location just a little bit, but still keeping the one entry exit driveway. The applicant also requested the addition of a drive-through on this site. Drive-throughs are allowed use in the C3 zone district. Staff had a significant concern with traffic exiting and entering a second full movement access point. And so working with the applicant, they've proposed a right out only northbound, and they've configured it in such a way that you can never prevent everyone from turning left where they're not supposed to, but this is a pretty good effort at making sure that traffic is intended to go only northbound, leaving that drive-through lane. And in terms of the town engineering review on this, our town engineers have reviewed the proposal conceptually and have agreed with the path that's been proposed in terms of the widening, the accesses. It complies with applicable town standards or is being modified appropriately to meet engineering standards and best practices. So what you're seeing on the proposed plans tonight, our engineering staff has said, yes, this concept will work. There are still some engineering level details that need to be worked out, striping, signage, placement for do not enter or left turns, things like that. But those are all engineering standards that they have to check boxes on and comply with. So for planning commission presentation purposes, we want to make sure you can see the relationship of the proposed accesses on the right out only exit on the north side. And our town engineering staff has blessed this concept. They still reserve the right to make final engineering improvement or requirements on those plans. Can I answer any questions on the engineering and the road and access information? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rowan.
Thank you, Cody. The site signage package, basically what I want to do with this is show the locations, the type of signage with this slide, the locations and the materials, the character of the signs, and then it's consistent with the architecture of the building. But there's also a second part to this equation as well, and that is the applicant is also proposing a artwork package. And you'll see that in the next slide, which consists of a timber frame windmill with a silhouette cowboy and a silhouette bronco. They're seeking support from and guidance from the planning commission about this artwork versus signage interpretation. But anyhow, this basically shows that the signage package that is associated with this project. And Cody, if you click, I apologize for the animation, but I think it creates interest.
Really?
There's many people call this. I can do that driving. But anyway, I just want to show the signage package on the site, the type of signs associated with those locations and so forth. They do have a reader sign that's gonna be on the east side by the drive-through, I-25 frontage exposure. They will have wall signs on the east and the west on the building itself. They will have a monument sign at the entrance. Currently, we're at approximately 96.5 feet of the 100 we're allowed for this property. So, that basically is our signage package that they're proposing. Go to the next slide. And
Can I
that,
ask a quick question? If memory serves, I thought there was something about electronic sign being used.
I can speak to that. There are very specific provisions on electronic reader board signs. At this point, the regulations, and we can certainly go through those if you'd like. But those regulations are tied to size, placement, brightness, how long the content on a changeable sign has to stay, so it's not considered flashing or whatever. It's a 1 minute dwell time. It can't include animation, like no animations like the slides here.
We won't be able to call design.
It's already.
That's right. So, and the reason is that those animations like fades and slides and things like that create a distraction for drivers for traffic standpoints. So the slides have to be a static message slide and go for 1 minute of time before it can cycle to the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
So those are all very well defined in the general provisions of our sign code, but I'm happy to go over those in detail at the planning commission. So, you know.
but that is, they're proposing, artwork for the project, kind of a gateway coming from the south headed north, on I-25. And I believe they are a significant size. So they will be visible from I-25 as well as, South 6th Street. Next slide will be the architectural package. As you can see, there's a variety of colors and materials proposed for the reconfigured, expanded and improved structure. It's aesthetically pleasing. I would, in my personal opinion, it's a much improvement over what is there.
Here's everybody else's.
It's got a beautiful stone work, by the way. The variety of materials include stone wainscot, metal trim, tinted glass glazing. The landscape is functional. It screens I-25, the parking lot. One of the concerns that we did have for the landscape and for the drive-through was that it could create conflict with southbound I-25 traffic. So we tried to screen the headlights at the drive-through to reduce that conflict with I-25 southbound traffic.
We can do that with I-25 all the way south.
The architecture is, as you see, is attractive and it won't be out of character for some of the businesses on 6th Street and so forth. I think it will, it should be fit into the fabric that is I-25 commercial corridor. Cody, if you click one more. Okay, that is the existing footprint of the structure. That's about 1,390 square feet. And click it one more time, Cody. That's going to be the expanded floor plan. 1,500 and oh gosh,
1592
yeah, it is.
ballpark.
Yeah.
Sounds about that, yeah.
So this just basically shows they filled in a notch in the northwest corner of the building, made that a room, and also the entry, they expanded that a bit as well. But again, this all fits into the setbacks of the lot and so forth. So dimensionally, this fits perfectly onto the site.
And just not to interrupt, but it's hard to see the white cursor on the white background, but the very north end, this is the canopy over the drive-through. That's also part of the proposed extension.
So in addition to the site plan, they're requesting guidance and support and interpretation of the artwork. But the site plan currently, the status is that it's still under review. We're still refining and working with the client, the applicant in regards to some of the issues and so forth. As Director Bird mentioned, traffic, access points with engineering and so forth. Putting the finer details to the drainage basin, the engineering of the site and so forth. But overall, the project is moving along. We're in our second review, and other than a few minor things, I don't think there's much remaining. So I guess with that, obviously the next step is the planning commission tonight making the determination of the project. Once we conclude our red lines, our comments and so forth, and the project is brought to town code and to the satisfaction of obviously the planning commission and staff, then we will put final signatures upon the document for final approvals. And then we'll start the building permit and construction process. So I guess with that, we asked the planning commission for permission for staff to do the final reviews and approvals of the minor revisions that remain on the project. And I guess with that, I'll conclude and answer any questions. Myself, the applicant, would answer any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So before we get into that, does the applicant have any presentation material? If you guys want to get up and
We do,
kind of,
unless you had questions for your staff, we would go, we'll be happy to go or wait till you do that or whatever.
you guys want to get the whole picture before we ask questions, or just you guys want to go?
Yeah.
Let the applicant go. Okay, Mr. Donnelly.
Thanks. Chairman, members of the commission, it's good to see you all again. Before I begin, I'd introduce our team that's with us today. First off, Mrs. DeVries, the owner of DeVries Properties, who I'm here on behalf of, apologizes. She's been under the weather and couldn't make it today, and spent her general manager, Corey Mitchell, is here with us. And so if you have any, I suppose, I don't know if this is necessarily germane, but he can answer any operational questions you might have about probably about traffic or anything like that. And if Corey doesn't know, our engineer, Kevin Forbes, is here. He did the engineering for this development. And then our building contractor, Dave Sorensen, is here as well. If you have any questions about actual construction and the amazing old building that we're bringing back to life here in Wellington, Dave's the guy. And then who's the guy who's going to come up here and share some comments with you, maybe in a little bit, is Troy Jones. He's an architect and land planner, and he did actually line share the work. I just tell the jokes and come to the meetings pretty much. And so, and I'm Tom Donnelly. I think I shared with this body and I believe it was May when I was here for the annexation, that my first foray in public life was actually to service on my own local planning commission in the city of Loveland. So I have deepest sympathies for you for the tough choices that you face. We have a very abbreviated, we have two PowerPoints, so maybe it's not that abbreviated. Mine is fairly abbreviated, but we also have one dealing with art, a little bit about art, which is something I don't know much about, but Troy will talk about probably at length. And so everyone knows this site. I actually stole, man, Paula, you did a great job, by the way. We should have hired you to do this presentation instead of me, for sure. But that was really beautiful and well done. So that's the nice thing about working with your staff. It's actually, they're so professional and they did a great job that there's not a lot left for me to say. I will say though this, that site has kind of been, I think, an eyesore for the town for decades, frankly. So I mentioned that we were here at Planning Commission in May. In June, we got annexation approval from the town board, and I think in July, someone turned us into code compliance because there was so much trash and overgrown weeds and things like that on the site. And so, I don't know who's managing the county down there, but they weren't taking care of business. And so, but we were happy to come into compliance and get that site cleaned up and get started on it. So, my point though is that it was in a pretty poor shape when Mrs. DeVries got a hold of the property. I had never, when I first came to planning commission, I'd never set foot in the building. I don't even know if we had the keys, from Mrs. Lamb, who actually is a resident of the town of Wellington. And so, I had shown, if you remember, I brought a site plan with me to that meeting, which was a completely different building, a different configuration, and everything. And so after we got inside this building, it was a really, kind of amazing, frankly. You know, it hadn't been occupied in, I don't know when, I mean, probably at least a decade. There was not even any leakage into the ceiling or anything. I mean, the roof was solid and, the floors were in great shape and solid. There was no squeaking or, I mean, anything like that. And Dave can attest to this because Dave would have probably killed us if we would have tried to reuse it if it wasn't in good shape. We got asbestos testing done and miraculously there was not even any asbestos in it. So, it was kind of a diamond in the rough. And so, we were really, you know, we thought this is kind of like a cool structure and what would you do with it? Go in the landfill or nobody's going to take it. And so, it's going to be repurposed. And can you hit the next slide maybe? Oh, maybe go one more and then I'll come back to this. And so this is really what Troy and Dave and Corey worked together and envisioned. And I think it's really amazing and it's really beautiful. And so there's a few details there that maybe we can talk about in a little greater detail. I mean, obviously everyone knows this is going to be proposed to be a marijuana dispensary and actually they have had their permitting hearing. That was last week in this very room. We already met with your hearing officer and had our formal hearing and she's going to release findings. And so it's well on the way to potentially being licensed, but I think that the reason I mention that is because this particular use, they don't want to have a lot of windows in the facility. I mean, that's a security risk and obviously keeping this stuff out of the black market, away from kids, everything like that. That's a responsible owner would certainly do that. And so we wanted to limit the real direct window space, but at the same time, we know how important it is that this be a four-sided building, right? There's not another single structure, I don't think, in this whole town that, I mean, it's right there, I-25 and 6th Street. And I mean, you get both the south and the east side of the building from I-25. And then on the north side of it, you know, there's just an empty parking lot. So it really required a four-sided design to really look good and to do right by the town, right? And do right by this commission. So now back up maybe. So when we first went in, Troy and I went in and met with Cody several months ago, and he cautioned us about trying to maybe do this on the cheap or do something that, you know, where he really didn't meet the standards that the town would have as far as really the visibility of this structure from I-25 and from 6th Street. So the bottom left corner, these are all buildings this is all frontage on I-25. I took these pictures, don't tell the sheriff because I was driving and taking photos, don't tell him. Anyway, the bottom left, I think is probably, I mean, a more egregious example. I mean, of just a plain metal building. The one above it is the grocery store. Obviously, it's the side of the grocery store there. There's really not much to break up visually break up the building except for signage, ironically. The Dollar General tried to do a little better. They at least did something to break it up and put some windows in, but there's not much color variation. And the Ziggy's did, I think, the best job of the four probably, and I think that was probably because this council had the greatest ability to interact with them and kind of guide their decisions with regards to design. And so that's a much better looking product, but actually I think ours even looks better than that. Frankly, there you go. On the east side of the building, to the left there, that's kind of, there's a safe room in this type of facility where they lock up, product at night. It has to be, I think Corey is the only one who has the combination or the key or whatever. I don't even know how it locks, but anyway, it's very, very tightly controlled. Obviously, we weren't gonna put windows in there. Don't tell me that you can cut in with your skill saw either, Tim. I know you can, but nothing can't be broken into. We understand that, but anyway, the controls are much tighter in this place. So what we did to break up the kind of that long side of that east building is we've got some beautiful like rusted steel, I don't know what you call those.
I guess panels.
Paneling types of things that would imitate windows in a way, but are actually gonna look really interesting if you're in the drive-through or something like that. So not just breaking up with colors and different materials, but also, creating kind of that illusion of windows. And so we think it's a really nice looking building. We think frankly, it's gonna rival anything in the town, anything else in the town from an architectural perspective, as far as really looking like a quality product. And certainly, we took seriously that obligation that the voters had put forth about, it's a very narrowly passed ballot measure. There were very strict requirements as far as setbacks and things like that. We took all that very seriously. We want to create a high quality product here for the town, and we want this to be something that the town hopefully can be proud of, right? And so you can go ahead. I might not, that might be my last slide. That was my last, you weren't supposed to go on that one. I was going to talk about that.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize it was there.
That's where there was a blanket on it. I could just talk about it since Cody screwed it up. Go forward. I was just going to mention that one reason for the write out only on our drive-through is you can see the vet hospital across the street from us. On the south side of the vet hospital, there's actually a curb cut that's been poured. And so that guy really has illegal access there. And so the proximity to where our drive-through comes out and his second unused driveway is really too close for the town engineer's comfort, right? They don't want full movement, access movement, exits there, where the traffic could kind of interact in a negative way if that guy ever did develop something there. I haven't talked to him. I have no idea. So I put this out. That shows the floodplain. So he has a limited ability to really develop it, but that doesn't mean he has no ability. My personal guess is that curb cut is there because he's got that fence. I don't know, I assume he must either work on horses or was thinking about working on horses and wanted a way to pull a trailer in Styria, so he wouldn't have to take horses out in his parking lot and potentially have a terrible disaster. That's my guess, but I've not spoken to him, but that's the reason for our write out, is to try to ensure that we can operate compatibly with that neighbor in the event that he ever does something there in the back end of his property. And so we're mindful of that. We're going to try to make that function as well as we can. And so I guess without further ado, maybe you can just open our second PowerPoint about the artwork. I don't know how interested you are on it. I wasn't going to talk about it too much, but apparently it's gonna be a subject that we need to talk about. So let's just do it. And I think Troy's going to talk mostly about this. So don't advance it. I'm just going to say a couple things about it. Every interchange, if you drive from here to Denver, has a McDonald's, right? And they have, every one of them has a Taco Bell or whatever, or a coffee shop. Every one of them doesn't have something that's sort of defined. And so what we really were seeking to do is try to create something that really stands out for the town of Wellington. We certainly didn't want to do anything that's gaudy or tacky or doesn't represent. This doesn't have, for instance, this doesn't have hot leaves on the blades of the windmill or anything tacky or stupid like that. We really wanted to embrace kind of the history of this community and sort of the ethos of the community and really bring that into a way and that it's encompassed in some artwork. And so that's really our thoughts behind this. And I think that we wanted something, and frankly, it's not that unusual to have windmills as kind of I don't know what you call them, visual art pieces. Corey lives in Windsor and there's a daycare center near his house that has a windmill. There's a decorative windmill, I think in Lee Martinez Park, maybe some breweries in Fort Collins have them as well, so. So it's not, we didn't create the wheel here by proposing this, but certainly it's a somewhat distinctive, structure and artwork and it's frankly, it's expensive. So, I mean, we want to do something that looks really good and, I mean, we wouldn't offer to spend the money to make something that looks, tacky or degrades the town in any way. So I think with that, I'm just gonna see if Troy wants to come up, go through his slides real quick, and then we'll answer any questions you might have.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Troy Jones. I'm the architect on the project and land planner, and I wanted to talk a little bit at Paul's recommendation about the artwork that we're proposing to kind of clarify what it is exactly as you need to decide whether that qualifies as artwork or whether it qualifies as signage, because that's what kind of the call that Paul thought that the board ought to make is what's the difference. I want to talk a little bit about that. Could you go into the next slide? I just wanted to show just some of the things we started to think about as we thought, well, what kind of artwork might be appropriate. And so we were looking at sort of Western influence art themes. There's full-blown sculptures, there's paintings, there's silhouettes. We started to think about, and then could you go to the next slide? This buffalo up on the hill, you all know well, it's not very far from here, and that started to kind of seem like something that might be sort of appropriate, but also in looking at some of the other Western themed things, down in Loveland, there's those silhouettes of those horses on the track and roller coaster. And then could we go to the next slide? And, same thing, we just kind of wanted to look at a lot of examples in the next slide. There's the cowboy boots in Cheyenne that they have down throughout their downtown, which is pretty neat. Next slide. And then there's other ideas that are larger and smaller that we just sort of gloss through all of the choices of things that we might consider as we're deciding what might be appropriate. Next slide. There's some other examples. Next slide. Yeah,
Scary.
right.
Horrifying.
Yeah. And they're, obviously the big horse down by DIA. And next slide. And then there's some sculptures move like a windmill. Like these are not windmills, but these are kinetic sculptures that have some sort of moving element to them. Next slide. Again, more kinetic ones. Next slide. So now we're starting to hone in on, well, what about windmills? And we thought windmill would be really appropriate for the geographical area that we're in, with all the ranching. Our proximity to Wyoming, it has somewhat of a northern Colorado and Wyoming have somewhat of an overlap of kind of this ranch theme. And so and Tom mentioned the Lee Martinez windmills on the left right there. And okay, so the next slide is there's this series of highway silhouettes that the state of Wyoming has this website that shows like this effort, but basically there's this website called 307 First, 307 being Wyoming's area code. I thought it was a really good example of to kind of show what we're starting to hone in on with these silhouettes. It's something similar to what this highway silhouette project that 307 First is doing up in Wyoming. Next slide. And so here's a few examples of some of their silhouettes that they've got in this 307first.com project, and they're pretty neat. And so we started looking kind of, well, how did they do that? Like, how did they get it to stand upright, and what is it made out of, and that sort of thing. And we sort of want to mimic what they're showing. I mean, how they did their silhouettes here. And next slide. And so I'm showing kind of some close-ups of how, they've got like a metal base, and they've got a few smaller metal posts that kind of hold them up. We haven't worked out the details, but we would, want to make sure it doesn't blow over. And some sort of a flat metal, with, a cutout of, like these are, of a Western theme. And the next slide kind of shows you where we ended up. So this is an actual windmill, and, when we get to the next slide, which I'm not ready for yet, I've got a picture of the windmill that we want to do. Which is an actual windmill, but these two things would be next to the windmill. The cowboy would be structurally independent from the windmill. He wouldn't actually be leaning up, but it looks like he's leaning up. But we don't want to mess up the forces on when the wind blows on the cowboy with the windmill. But we would have a cowboy there and then a horse next to the cowboy. Bucking horse, similar to those ones that on that previous several slides. Next slide. So this is what the windmill looks like. And a few little snippets of out of the installation manual for the windmill that we want to use. We started off, Paul had mentioned it's a timber windmill, but we ended up deciding that this one made a lot of sense. Keeping it all metal. And so then I think I'm ready for the next slide. So then I wanted to speak a little bit more about what Tom kind of brought up, this artwork on the side of the building that faces I-25. And so those dark brown panels, there's three of them. There's the long one, and then there's the two. And it would be something like this. This isn't the exact design, but this is kind of how it would work. Is you've got this metal panel that is got the patina, like rust color on the steel, and they have these laser cutters that can be fabricated with whatever design you come up with, and then the computer just cuts it out. So that's an example of a Western theme up there on the actual one. That's like more of a nature bird theme, but we're still working on what that design would exactly be, but this sort of gives you the idea. And I think that's the last slide, but let's check that. So we really wanted to have the commission make the decision that what we're proposing to be art, which are those two silhouettes and the windmill and those panels on the side of the building, are considered art and not signage. Because as Paul was explaining, the square footage for the signage that we have is exactly at 96 square feet, and we're allowed 100. And signage, we're considering things that have words on them, that the business name or logos or the electronic sign as well. So I think that concludes my presentation.
Commission had no questions. One of the things I might just mention real briefly is I think a lot of you were on this council when we came to the planning commission. Mrs. DeVries actually was here with us at that time. One reason why this is so important to her and why she really was trying to incorporate some of these types of aspects is I think I mentioned it at that time. She's like a fifth generation farmer. They farm here locally in Larimer County, and so that agricultural connection is really important to her and in everything that she does. And so that's a little bit of the nexus behind this this decision to try to develop some artwork that would kind of tie in our own history with that of the towns, as well as kind of our Colorado history as well. So maybe that's just to add a little bit of an insight into why the method to our madness, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you both. Thank you, Troy. Mr. Allen, if you don't mind standing at the podium, kind of while we're doing the discussion here, it might be easier. And then Troy, if any comments or questions relate to you, feel free to just.
Like we have a whole team.
Yeah, or anybody, absolutely.
Yeah,
If it's your specialty, feel free to jump up and field the question. Okay, well, we'll turn it over to the commission. Anybody want to get the conversation rolling? Any questions?
So I'm looking at the building materials for the exterior. Is it primarily metal siding?
No, maybe could we get to that image of, it's a mixture. We've got some barnwood, we've got some stucco, we've got some stone. I think we've got two different heights of the wainscot on the stone, depending on what part of the building you're at. And then there's some metal panels. We've got several different, we've got like some corrugated metal, and then we've also just got some metal paneled, kind of the flat ribs. And then our roof is standing seam metal roof. So it's a real mixture, but there's a pretty good element of all of those materials in there, but
And then I might add, there's some old barnwood on that front entranceway, and as you look, you can see it going up the side. We've already bought it from the.
Gonna come up and maybe you gotta use the mic.
Oh,
They probably have people watching this.
Thank you.
Come up to the mic.
Well, you've got a player here in town that sells old barnwood. And so we went and looked at a lot of that stuff, and so some of the beams that are gonna be exposed in the canopy area, that's coming from there. We're gonna use some old, 4x8 barn beams.
And in the interior.
We're gonna put some in the interior that we've needed to change where header locations and door locations are gonna be, and what this building is actually two pre-built buildings that were put together. So that common wall, we had to open that up for the lobby area that we've done during the demo, so we're gonna put in an old barn beam across that 10-foot opening to carry that roof load. So we're gonna get a lot of that material from over here. And then stain it, a little darker color than probably what we got here, but yeah, and then we've got the rock and standing seam, copper roof. So,
That sounds great. I just wanted to make sure it didn't look like a metal poster.
yeah, so that, yeah, on that picture there, now that it's, so the gray parts are metal siding, the tan is stucco, and you can see the stone wainscot on the various areas. And then the element that's got the vertical brown and tan stripes is the barnwood.
I am excited to see this, building come to fruition, and I would say that I'm somewhat surprised when I heard or read that you're using the existing building. To ride my bicycle to that building, when I was a kid, so it's been there very long time.
It was not judge you if you ride to it afterward.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited to see that. My question is, it's a modular. So when you normally think modular, you're thinking of a building that could easily be moved out, moved in. And so what I'm seeing, and, help me, you're really fixing this building as a permanent structure here.
Yeah, when you guys want to talk about it, it's.
Yeah, it's on a foundation.
Yeah.
And it is stick built with 2x4 walls. And then the party wall, so each half just happens to be an independent structure. But then they're sitting on the foundation, and it's really sturdy. But just happens to have been built in a factory and moved onto the foundation, so.
Yeah, I made my son dig up the foundation wall. I only had to pay him in McDonald's to try to see, the footer underneath it, and it's remarkable how solid it is. I wasn't joking when I said, we walked through it, and it's just as solid as can be. I mean, it's amazing.
well, we've completed the demo. And I was surprised at how good a shape it actually is. I mean, we've got it, all the plumbing, electrical, HVAC, that's all gone. And the drywall is all gone, but the 2x4s, every one of them in there, straight, true. Looks like we just bought it at not Home Depot because they're all crooked. At a reputable lumberyard. I mean, I was amazed at how good a shape and weather tight that it is, being built in 1975.
Yeah, I saw that, and so I was surprised. So you said there was no asbestos in it, or did you guys have to mitigate some?
No, we didn't mitigate it. We tested. I asked for the very worst tester they had, and the guy told me, well, you got the wrong guy. I'm the very best. I'm always find it. He didn't find any. I mean, he even climbed up on the roof and checked the shingles. He was so thorough and we didn't find a single bit.
I
So,
had to go through asbestos mitigation on a mobile home.
yeah,
So-
not fun.
Yeah, less than 3%.
Yeah, we were really hoping that we wouldn't have to, and it turned out we didn't, so it was great.
Could one of you gentlemen clarify, the drive-through kiosk? It shows up on some of the plans, but not on others. Is
Yeah.
that Gonna make the final cut, or what exactly?
Corey, do you want to talk about it, or?
Sure.
Come on, Adam. I think, and so, yeah, this is not a drive-through necessarily that's gonna be exactly like what you're gonna have at McDonald's because of security purposes, but Corey's the general manager, and he can tell you how it's gonna.
I don't know if you guys have ever eaten at like the Subways that have it's a standing touchscreen. So it's a live menu like kiosk where it has a voice box, but knowing that it's on I-25 and how loud it is, if you ever stood on that property, you can't hear anything. So that was my idea to mitigate the noise, was to make it a touch screen, you know. I already worked with I manage another store in Fort Collins. That's right. I've learned all this as I go, but we already have the menu integrations, and this is all custom built stuff, and it's very easy to make it a
Navigable, yeah.
navigable menu.
Yeah.
But it's a simple structure, it's weatherproof, just sits on a little concrete footer, touchscreen, everything, and then as they come around that drive-through, we actually have a banker's window for safety, and it's bulletproof glass and everything. With the drawer that comes out automated, it's all machine, so it's not like a McDonald's drive-through, it's very thorough.
It's like ordering at Subway and having the bank give you your sandwich.
Yeah.
That little thing,
Yeah.
there's no open windows or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Perfect, okay, awesome, thank you. I appreciate it.
Just on that curve where you turn out, what if some idiot with horse trailer pulls in there? You'll be able to get out?
When we met with fire department, and everything, we've done everything they required as far as.
We're gonna try to have a sign that says, if you got a trailer, please don't pull in
Yeah.
here.
I would just like,
I was just curious, 'cause
right,
there are
some people are not, yeah, and I agree.
I mean, if they pull in, can they turn around before they get to that?
If they're really good at backing trailers, they probably can turn around in there. Otherwise, they might have to realize once they get in that they just need to
Back
out.
you know,
Yeah.
that was a bad-
I would hope they would not try to drive a trailer.
I mean, I hope that's not an issue on this board that we have to worry about this.
Yeah,
I've seen
Really
that,
wanna
if
do
it happened with a trailer and figured it will.
yeah.
That's probably the same situation in a lot of your drive-throughs and along that corridor, or probably have a similar type of situation where, you know, they wouldn't accommodate an RV or necessarily a trailer or something like that. But, and obviously, I mean, that site is so constrained. It's such an oddball shape and really, it's very, especially when you
You'd
accommodate.
hope they park at the.
Yeah,
towers.
we can't tell them to do that. We don't have an easement, but obviously that probably would be what someone would do. We're not advocating that they do that if they're pulling a trailer.
Right.
Yeah.
There's other places to park to get up here in a camper or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the issues I've noticed, and this is probably half for you and half for you. The Ziggies, right? Or not Ziggies, I'm sorry, the human being. The right-hand turn only exit out of the human being parking lot. People try to turn left out of there all the time. Is there a way so that the sidewalk kind of prevents someone? It makes it obvious you're turning right, besides the big sign that says right turn only. To prevent people from going left?
I was gonna ask the same question, but the Bean did it. They poured curb and gutter to direct you
They
right
did,
out of it.
but it's wide.
I know.
Make
I
it
know.
narrow.
I had the same question.
Ours is curved like that, Commissioner, so we're trying, and we're obviously gonna sign it. People
Yeah,
drive the wrong way down the interstate. I mean, sometimes will do silly stuff, but our intention is to try to direct them and certainly make it easier for them to turn right.
Well, one of the things to note is that most of these people are gonna be going back up to the freeway energy, so they're gonna wanna go right anyway. There isn't gonna be a lot of demand up in this location to go left. like a human being, they want to get to their. communities.
They want to come, they do want to go back to the north, so this is probably.
Right, that was a good solution, I like that.
Well, I mean, you can't design out for every level of stupidity. I mean, you encourage people to do something, but I mean, when the coffee shop opened, saw people trying to back in like the exit of a human being, and I was. So you can try to encourage people, but you cannot stop all stupidity. So I don't think that's really a
I
concern.
have two teenage drivers. I can attest to what the commissioner's saying. That is 100% true.
So with the expansion of the road, we're adding a third lane, correct? Or turn lane
Yeah, I think,
into that parking lot
you
area?
know, I'll clarify a little bit.
No.
It's not adding a third lane, it's the existing road section has a center turn lane that stops just short of this property site. Mr. Forbes has put together a plan that our engineering division has looked at, and so this will work. There's some final details that will be finalized, but they're extending that turn lane all the way down to access the driveway for this location.
Yeah, it's basically a continuation of that center turn lane down to our entrance. You do still have some issues on the west side of that roadway where it kind of stops short there at there's a guy's property there and where the Coal Creek goes through. There's kind of still a sticky situation right there. So it doesn't remedy the whole road section, but it certainly will expand that median turn lane. We think that's gonna do a lot to alleviate.
My thought
Traffic.
is along the lines of, I mean, in and out, right? Let's assume
Yeah.
your smoking cowboy is gonna be like in and out. So if people are lining up to get in that drive-through, what's gonna happen to the rest of the traffic?
Yeah, we did it. We didn't have a traffic engineer here, but we did, we obviously had to have a traffic engineer review this and design our systems to make sure that we could handle the peak flow. And interestingly enough, he has a son that actually works for a marijuana dispensary. So he's done quite a lot of research on it and how they operate. And he felt very comfortable with our traffic counts and that we would be able to handle it. Like I said, this is not a perfect site to do, like you're saying, you can, I don't know how many cars can you hold in there, Kevin? You can hold a lot, but it's about 20 cars.
Is that stacked or parked?
That's stuck. But plus there's what, 13 parking spaces? There's 12.
Yeah, so, I mean, the way he did that is really a very creative solution to hold quite a lot more traffic than I had really believed we would ever be able to do on there. And so it would be unlikely that we'll back anything up onto the roadway. I think that would be very, very unlikely. And, if it drives through, starts backing up, I mean, people probably just choose to go inside.
Oh, I guess I could speak to that too. So I have, like, my other solution to that, I mean, it's gonna be ebbs and flows of people, but would be the Chick-fil-A style. People come out with tablets and pre-order and try to help move that flow faster by having that'll speed up the drive-through lane, because you can come out with a tablet, pre-order, package and roll right through. So
And I think probably the packaging aspect of this is pretty quick.
oh yeah, it's a pick order. I mean, it's just pick orders and all the ID check, everything's all digital, so they can do that from the tablet. It just scans their ID, it's connected to the DMV database, 99.9% effective, and then we check it again at the door. So super easy, but that would be my solution to keeping it from backing up is the kind of the Chick-fil-A model.
Yeah, and the ID check, there's a double check, like you mentioned, is the longest piece of the process. I mean, so if they can move a person probably faster than they can cook a hamburger and wrap it, right? I think that's really true. So, I don't think that there's gonna be a problem, with that traffic backing up significantly. Even on Friday night.
Does the parking include parking for employees?
in those 12 spaces?
Yeah, it does. That's our only parking that we were able to secure. So it does have to accommodate our staff level parking as well. And Corey, is that about 5 spots or is it 3 to 5? Probably.
3 to 5. 5 would be, I mean, we have 5 point of sales, but that's just in case kind of thing. Typically, I would say 3 on staff.
And so, yeah, what did we have, 12 total?
Yes.
We have 12 total, so 3 of those are gonna be
Is that with any 12 with handicappers or one more?
One more, okay.
plus 1.
So leave you 7 spaces
Yes.
after Lori's? Yeah.
Plus the drive-through stacking.
No, 12 plus 1, 9 plus.
After employees.
Oh, yeah, 9 plus 1 handicap after employees, right? Is that right?
County handicap is gonna be able to use that.
It's 12. It's almost-
Handicap, we'll do the math.
I know. Make my little with my mouth, not my brain. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Please.
I just wanted to point out that for the town's parking standards, they exceed the minimum parking requirement for the site.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I read here that actually 7 were required for that size.
And there's-
So I'm,
It's based on square footage. of the building.
The classification of the building, like what it seems. So, on sheet 10, it looks like. There looks like 24-inch diameter pipe. Is that going to try to alleviate some of the water that is on the west side from the box elder? Is that what that is doing?
It's a storm sewer. There's an inlet box there, I believe, in 24 inch. Is that what you're talking about? Storm sewer? You want to talk about it, Kevin? Sure. I think this is actually, it's more expensive, frankly, for us, but we think there's a pretty positive benefit for both the town and for our site. To take some of that storm water and divert it into that storm sewer.
Which one are you talking about?
It is,
Across.
810.
Neither of us can read the numbers.
The site plan.
There you go. No, that's-
Yeah, this is called 6 feet improvements.
Okay.
Wait a minute, what is that? Oh,
That's the
fine.
extension.
Oh, it's right here.
Yeah. Well, okay. A couple different, 24 inches.
Oh, that's the existing pipe. That's the
Yes.
existing pipe. I thought you
And we're
meant
doing an extension to that.
the other one. Can we extend it for the, so that we can put the taper over the top, or we can put the road section over the
We
top?
can widen the road.
But this isn't the latest, is it, Kevin?
I'm not sure.
I can't speak to that. It came out.
Yeah, I
in the
know.
packet.
Okay.
Date 9/7/22.
Does yours have that on it this one?
No,
The inlet box and the, we're gonna go into the storm sewer.
Yeah, that's. We did change this. This is where some of the,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, so this is just extending this so your road can be.
Yeah.
It's just the right number.
it's one of the things that the engineers, Bob and Alex has asked for us to, we had to add another 4 feet to the shoulder. It was just getting a little tight there where everything was meandering over. And so we extended the pipe there. So that's the 24, that's one of the 24.
And of course, I complained about it, but in reality, it's much safer than
Yep.
trying to put that taper right over that pipe. I mean, if somebody drops a tire over that, they'll flip the car, right? So, I mean, your engineer was departmentally right, and we really should do it that way. Even if it's more expensive, we really need to do it.
There's gonna be one more change in my discussions with Alex. We're gonna change that taper to a 20-to-1. Right now I have a 15-to-1, which is what the speed limit allows. It's 35 miles an hour right there. So it gets a little bit more, so it's not such a quick,
And extend it even further. Yeah, and there's a little tiny bit of storm sewer there, which Commissioner, I thought was what you were referring to, where we were previously, this site is drained into that pipe that's under. Yeah, there you go. That's not the one that,
No, that's good right there.
is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see there's a little inlet. There's an inlet box. It says there, what's that say,
Right there.
11 type R curb inlet. We're gonna build an inlet box there in the new curb and gutter section. And we're gonna drain into your existing
It's a 42-inch.
42-inch sewer line, right? And we're gonna take a lot of that water I think that's kind of potentially backs up right there at the interstate, right at that triangle and try to dispel it a little bit.
Are you gonna divert runoff into the sewer system? Is that what? Or is that going into a drainage system?
Storm sewer.
Okay.
Yeah, we would, yeah, you can't put it into a sanitary sewer.
Actually, so that's the idea for this site. All the stormwater that's coming off the quality end is actually coming to an area inlet, and it goes into the 42 also. But the majority of that streets, east gutter system just runs out and it kind of peters out right at the north side of this property. It's kind of dug a hole there and actually found its way into the crawl space of that existing building. Davis has dredged that out, got it to now where it's going, where it's supposed to go, and that's into the right of way for I-25. And that's pretty much what we're gonna do with that catch inlet, the type R. That's at the, and you were pointing up there, or
You can go back.
you know, you're good.
Oh, the type R.
Okay, yeah, right there. That's a type R inlet. So all the water that's coming into the gutter there will then go into that and then go into the 42-inch.
And go into your big storm sewer and then get
Right.
diverted down further south.
So right now, one of Tom's previous on his PowerPoint, he showed the floodway. You know, it was all the big blue. That's because it's a backwater situation there. There's no place for that water to go. But that 42 alleviates that and gets it out.
Will that help on the outer side?
Yes.
Mr. Forbes would know more about that. I can't speak to that.
Across the street.
Yeah, well, according to some old maps you guys have, there's just like a very small pipe.
Yeah.
That takes that water, goes across I-25, and it's all backwater right there. So yes, it should.
Yeah, Gold Plain is wide, really wide there, and yeah, so we're trying to alleviate those, some of that, at least some of that. I mean, maybe we don't take care of everything, but hopefully we'll take care of at least some of that.
This addition, when making a road wider, is it gonna make the road smoother?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think, I'll-
can't help but go the speed limit there or slower.
I think the appropriate response there is that the applicant to make their utility connections will have to come into the street and they'll be required to patch that and actually existing surface.
We will. Yeah.
So I have a question there, too. I mean, I think this is an important one to have, and you sort of brought it up is, you know, I think what do you think of the artwork? Is it a sign or is it art? I mean, I'd be curious to hear. I think it's gonna be a good discussion, so I'm just curious what your perspectives are.
I would say it's art.
We agree.
You had alluded that there's not gonna be any signs, words, arrows,
Marijuana leaves, nothing like that. No,
cowboys is not gonna be smoking,
no,
maybe he is smoking.
no. He's not a Rasta. He's a cowboy, not a Rasta or something like that. No.
Yeah. So I can't see that having a sign at all.
I appreciate anything that adds visual interest, especially the thought that was put into keeping it tied to the history of the town and sort of who we are, so.
Is our sign code in any way say this is signage?
And I'd be happy to go over sign code if you'd like. Generally speaking. The sign code doesn't directly regulate anything on art. Art is typically not part of the sign package. There's usually a general exemption that art is not regulated as a sign because it is freedom of expression protected under First Amendment rights. There has been legislation in the Supreme Court in the past on what is advertising versus what is art. And Mr. Donnelly threw out the McDonald's example earlier, the golden arches, that's generally not considered art. That is generally considered part of a sign package. And because it's recognizable, it's the emblem for that company. There's been a lot of different avenues that different municipalities and different applicants have taken on the discretion between what is art and what is signage. And that's because we don't have anything clear for public art or art in public places. We wanted to bring up this topic for some discussion.
I assume that the sign that's on the front of the west side of the building with the cowboy with the smoke, Is that the logo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I actually looked at, I believe it is art, right? And again, and the reason I asked this, because I actually looked this up. You know, what is a sign in marketing and advertising? It provides a place on or before a premise to identify its occupant and the nature of the business done there, or placed at a distance to advertise a business or product. So I don't see a windmill and a horse and a cowboy somehow indicative. Now, of course, you look at some companies like Coke, Starbucks, who spend billions of dollars, McDonald's, so when you see that M, it's not artwork, but this is not, this is not the case in my consideration. I consider this artwork. I do have a question, and this comes down, well, since it's artwork, question is adjacent to the CDOT right away. I mean, I think the fact that it's gonna move is gonna be really cool. CDOT have any guidance about moving signs in a certain distance from their roadways?
I can't speak for CDOT. I'm not familiar with their standards, and CDOT was not a referral agent on this particular project because there's adjacency, but there's no highway access. If the state has parameters or regulations for structures outside of their right of way, I'm not familiar with what that is. We could certainly refer this to CDOT if that's deemed as necessary. To be honest, that's not something that we're very familiar with.
Again, more of a curiosity. I mean, I think it was great. I wish the Cowboys wasn't hanging off the windmill, but I understand why we can't.
Yeah, that was the original idea, but yeah, we didn't want to have a physics issue with the.
Yeah, and obviously we'll have an engineered foundation to put the windmill on. We don't want it to fall or anything to happen to it. And certainly we think that, I don't think the visual distraction will be significant. And I think that Cody mentioned something that's pretty important here. I mean, I don't think you have a very robust art in public places program here in the town. You probably don't have any means to fund such a program. So the fact that I think this applicant brings forward some, I mean, art's in the eye of the beholder, obviously, but I mean, we obviously think it's artistic and we think it's gonna look, you know, beneficial to the town. It's not gonna degrade the town anyway. So I think it's like, it's kind of like free art for you. So we think it's a win-win.
Anyone have any concerns on the size and the scale?
I'm only concerned to make sure that it's engineered for like
Sure.
high wind.
Certainly,
Right.
yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit. This is windmill is actually by like, it's a functioning windmill. It's obviously not gonna be hooked up, but it's engineered and built by the biggest windmill company on the planet. So it's a very nice windmill. And we have all their structural drawings, which will be given and to Dave and put in place. That windmill will not go anywhere. And actually, the guy that I bought it or bought the windmill from this company, his brother lived in Wellington, so he knows this area very well. And I asked that, and I said, "Okay, you know we're on the close to the Wyoming border. If we get crazy wind," he's like, "Oh yeah, I know that area well," and said, "You will not have a problem."
Okay, I mean, I have cast iron patio furniture. I'm sad with that.
Yeah.
And the winds just a few weeks ago, actually for the first time ever, knocked the chair over.
Yeah.
So that's.
Oh, yeah.
That is I think the height is good. I mean, if you consider we do have a couple murals and those aren't considered signs,
Yeah.
right? That's public art. And I think this makes, hopefully, set a really good trend for other businesses that want to come into town, regardless of what type of business it is, to want to add to the aesthetics of our community. So.
For sure. I think it'll look really good.
Will the wind part of it turn, so we know what direction the wind is going?
Yeah, it will. So it'll have functioning and the way the windmills are engineered, they actually like they counter the wind. So as the wind picks up, that blade slows itself. They're crazy engineering on them, but yeah, it'll be functioning.
They won't let me drill a well so that I can.
Yeah, I wish.
If they could, they'd probably bring some cattle up and try to water them there, and make it a feedlot. I know that mice are gonna use it.
Right.
Are there any concerns on that signage? We'll get away from the art. I think everybody's in agreement that the art is the art. As far as building signage, the monument sign, the reader board. Any changes to that aside from what's shown here would be administrative, correct? So you guys can handle that later with an updated sign plan.
Correct. I think what the staff report alludes to is the applicant has shown their proposed sign package. The town staff typically administers the sign permits to make sure that the final sign as presented meets all of our specifications for wall signs, if they're lighted or not illuminated, if they're just affixed to the building. We also check the fasteners, make sure they're not gonna fall on anyone, things of that nature. So those are administrative, tasks. What the planning commission's purview on the sign package is making sure that the locations of freestanding signs are appropriate for the site. That the, building materials are generally consistent or compatible with, excuse me, the sign materials are generally consistent or compatible with the building materials for the structure or, you know, expresses some theme that's consistent with the building and the architecture for the site. I do think the staff report alludes to a comment that the planning commission might want to consider whether or not the pole should be enclosed on the freestanding sign. It's been a typical requirement of commissions I've worked with in the past. We haven't really addressed that issue, so I want to throw it out there for consideration, just meeting the compatibility of the architectural controls for building and site materials. Similar to like a trash container matching the material and design. I think there's a minor comment about the monument sign on the 6th Street side being enclosed within a utility easement. And typically those utility easements are free of permanent obstruction, so it might need to be relocated a little bit further east.
We'd be happy, Mr. Chairman, we'd be happy to work with the town staff to address the issue. That won't be an insurmountable issue for us, I promise.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do you guys have an opinion on enclosing the signpost? It's hard to say a metal signpost doesn't match architecturally with the building that has metal on it, so.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was painted and generally kept in good repair, I don't.
Yeah.
Don't let it come in disrepair and get rusted out, if you're not gonna wanna do that on a big sign anyway.
I feel pretty confident that staff has led the discussion to make this building as attractive as possible for our town, and so I would trust staff to direct in that vein.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really like that. I like the design. I'm really quite impressed by it. And I think those cutout metal panels, which you're gonna hang on the walls, is a great idea to kind of, obviously, they are not windows, they sort of reference to it, to understand the reason not having windows. But I think it's a really nice feature and part of it. So I think the package is really good.
Thanks, Joe.
Is any other questions for the applicant or for staff?
I'm just wondering where my 3D walkthrough is.
Yeah.
Have to get Paul.
That guy did it. That's really amazing.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bird.
I'm sorry, there was one other thing I was going to mention. It's in the staff report. I just want to throw it out there because the topic has come up in the past. The sidewalk and the pedestrian connectivity. This site, and we spoke with the designers and the applicant on this. Staff had recommended that the public sidewalk on the east side of 6th Street adjacent to the site not be extended all the way through the site because there's nothing for it to connect to. Yeah, it would put pedestrians into the highway right of way or drainage. And we also talked about what about a crosswalk to get them to the west side of the street, but there's no logical crossing point anywhere in that arterial corridor. So I just wanted to highlight that as a part of the presentation tonight, that our recommendation was to continue the sidewalk to the site and provide a connection to the entrance of the facility, but not to extend it or try to cross anywhere on the site.
Makes sense.
Works for me.
Thank you. That was just a little bit different than a typical site plan, so I wanted to bring some attention
Well,
to
it
it.
comes to an abrupt end at the highway, so.
Thank you.
Before we motion to vote, any members of the public back there? Any public comments? Come on up.
That's all we've been waiting for.
Melissa Whitehouse, 3922 Grant Avenue. You've addressed the traffic issues I would have brought up. I thought at one point at a previous meeting that they had discussed sharing or doing a lease agreement with the Quality Inn in case they did want to do a drive-through. Clearly, that's not the case. They're going to go ahead and build a drive-through. Doesn't look to me like the exit driveway is gonna the headlights are gonna be headed straight at any house right across the street. That would have been my only other concern. Clearly it isn't. He's much further south. That's fantastic drainage. Thank you very much for that. The other issue that I saw, of course, it's artwork. It's twice the height of the highest point of the building. It's not 40 feet tall, it's gonna be 45 or 50 feet tall. CDOT, and this might be arcane kind of code. CDOT formerly was always concerned with FCC issues, with any transmission issues. I'm just presuming since the windmill itself is not gonna be timber, it's actually gonna be manufactured by a windmill manufacturer. They know full well, I believe, they should.
Yeah.
What those CDOT adjacencies or any issues they might have possibly have, especially with the FCC, so I don't consider that to be any issue, but you might wanna just confirm that with the builder. Cause that's kind of a no-brainer. It's kind of funny, it's quirky art. It might actually be an attraction, almost to the point of rest area. Traveler visitor center, because it's that quirky. And I don't know if you then have to consider that for the site plan, because it just might be that much of an attraction. The only issue that I see for that artwork is because it is right there on I-25. There's always silly people that are gonna pull over on I-25 on the shoulder, run up there, get their picture taken, and is it climbable?
It's not. So we can, the ladder. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Kids trying
I
to
know.
do that thing.
we did,
So
and
if
that
it's
ladder
not-
can be cut off at any height and we're actually going to put kind of like a little fencing structure around it and try to keep people. away
That's
from it as
beautiful,
much.
swimming pool style.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's all I was concerned about. Thank you.
Yep, we thought about that as well.
It didn't even occur to me someone were trying to.
I already, come on, you live in Lawrence.
That would have been me.
Again, yes, our kids do stuff
You're
here.
the only little one.
Thank you.
But I don't remember, I don't remember if there was any comments that I need to, did you want me to respond to any of your comments? Like,
No, the manufacturer of the windmill is the only one.
Okay.
Who's manufacturing, clearly they're gonna perform that with CDOT and FCC.
yeah, and certainly we'll do everything we can to ensure that it's erected and it doesn't present, hopefully any kind of hazard or anything like that. It certainly wouldn't be our desire. Obviously on private property, we have tremendous liability in that instance, so we will do everything we can to ensure that doesn't happen. I think what it'll probably end up being is kind of a navigational beacon. Yeah, when you see the giant windmill, my house is, turn right and get, my house is, whatever. So we think it'd probably be a waypoint maybe from a navigational perspective, but we hope it doesn't represent any kind of attractive nuisance, certainly, since it's on private property. We're doing anything we can, like that one being the case. Thank you.
Just one other trivial note, because there is
Dave, you gotta get up.
the possibility of stupid people
He didn't even.
standing next to it when lightning occurs, we are gonna ground it and bond it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was probably what coming up on.
In 45 years of construction, I also know you can't fix stupid. We can try, we can't, we just haven't been able to do it yet.
Keep after it if you find the answers. let us know. Just relative to the windmill structure, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it in a public meeting anyhow. Wireless telecommunication facilities require separate conditional use approval. So this facility or the structure could not be used for wireless antenna array, and a separate review and approval process and public hearing would be conducted.
Good point.
Doesn't sound like that's the intended.
I don't know if that at all, but believe me, you'll thank me later, so I'm asking for a wireless tower.
Starter of the little internet company.
And the other thing I was gonna ask the applicant, if your logo or business name or entity changes in any way, would you change the silhouettes in your artwork to match the company design logo or theme?
Well, I don't see it ever changing. That was the whole point of being in Wellington, and I grew up farming and everything as well. Like, that's really in our blood. So like, this culture and theme is not going to change. But I do not see that happening.
Okay, thank you, just wanted to ask.
Yeah. And maybe for the record, what would we have to do if we changed it? We'd have to come through some type of review, I assume.
I think it'd be worthy of getting an amended site plan or something else, especially if the size, structure, or something were changing that impacted the site or could impact the site.
If it comes before you put banana.
Yeah,
I
so,
feel like that's no longer the art, but.
yeah, so I mean, this is no intention of this happening. This has really been a labor of love for the family to develop this site. But I think what Cody's talking about, and I'll just say it, I mean, it's probably does not do me any favors to say this, but I'll just say it. So if a company like Livewell or something wanted to purchase, what Cody's talking about is Livewell came in and tried to buy the dispensary and then they have 25 shops all with the same logo and everything like that. What would happen? And I assume there'd be some type of process that you would make an owner go through in order to change that signage. But I can tell you, Julia is very, very healthy. She's in many ways much healthier than me, I believe, probably than any of us on the team. Her kids are young. I mean, I think they're around 40, probably is the median age. They're gonna have this, they intend to have this as their business for a long, long time. And they plan to be part of this community for a long time. But in the event that something like that did change, I will say here on the record, we wouldn't be opposed to any type of review that the town might see fit to bring this into compliance with whatever your standards are at the time. We'd be completely comfortable with making that affirmation here on the record, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, anybody else have anything closing? Do I have a motion to approve the site plan?
I make a motion that we approve the site plan as presented for the address of 7846th Street.
We just did this last week, Cody, I apologize. Do we need to include subject to staff comments to allow you to go back and administratively approve things outside of what we approved tonight?
I don't believe it's a requirement. We usually include that in the recommended motion just to capture the staff report. The staff report alludes to some engineering review that's outside of the planning commission's purview. So I always throw it in there as a catch-all subject to comments, but I don't believe it's necessary based on the discussion that we had tonight. The applicant has acknowledged all of the comments and questions that we discussed, and they'll adhere with all the staff report comments.
If Commissioner Whitehouse motion is acceptable, there was a second from Commissioner Capper. So can I roll call this?
Commissioner Connect,
Yes.
McCaffrey,
Yes.
Whitehouse,
Yes.
Moyer,
Yes.
Shalay,
Yes.
Sarner.
Yes. Okay, I think that takes care of the site plan.
Thank you, Commission. Appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you for your time. Thank you for the presentation as well. We'll give these guys a second to clear out any of the elections. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We'll move on to the election of officers.
All right, Burn Plan Director, my presentation will be brief. Have you read the staff report on election of officers and those protocols?
Yes, sir.
Any questions on those procedures?
No, sir.
Okay, the chair and vice chair are elected annually, and it's that time, first meeting of the new year. So nominations, seconds, accept the nomination, and then once all nominations are received, we'll take a vote. I recommend doing the chair first, followed by the vice chair. And the secretary is staff, so you don't have to vote on that.
I nominate Gary Sutter to be our chairman.
I second that.
Mr. Sarter, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Are there any other nominations?
All right.
It sounds like you wanted.
No, I'm I'll very happily take it from here.
Okay. You do a vote?
I said that 7 times.
Roll call.
Commissioner Hammond,
Yes, please.
McCaffrey,
Yes.
Whitehouse,
Yes.
Moyer. Yes. Chile,
Yes.
Sarner.
Yes. Awesome, thank you all.
Get railroad. Still along with you, catch me.
I'm sorry, I'm making notes. Who seconded the nomination? Was that?
I did.
Thank you. I can do it, you can do it.
We'll open it for,
You're the chair, you just got ready.
evidently, here we go
It's
again.
up to you.
We'll open it for nominations for vice chair.
Nominate, Linda Canary.
Second.
You accept?
I do.
Roll call, please.
Chairman Sarner,
Yes.
Chile. Yes. Moyer. Yes. Whitehouse,
Yes.
McCaffrey,
Yes.
Connect.
Yes.
But no updates on the website either.
Stuck with us again.
Well, she didn't have to step in once during this last year, so you had to have her do it again. This gotta happen sooner or later.
Well, now that we have 2 kids who do sports.
Okay, awesome. Any announcements?
Just real brief, I'll let you know, we don't have any public hearing items on the agenda that we're anticipating for February. So we may have a fairly light agenda. One of the things that is on staff's radar is the need for a discussion on policies, bylaws, just general review of applications and those procedures, what staff reviews, what planning commission reviews. So that was something that we had talked about, or at least, I'm sorry, excuse me, the chairman and I had talked about the need for reviewing and refreshing some of those materials. So we would plan on presenting that as sort of a work session topic. The timing of that might depend on other items submitted for that agenda, whether we do that at 6 o'clock or 5:30 or just part of the regular meeting if it's a light agenda. So that's what's on staff's radar, potentially as well as some other topics that might come up. And we're not anticipating a real heavy agenda for February from an application standpoint.
Okay, so it will be at least a regular meeting for February.
We suspect that it's possible, depending on the status of some of the applications that are in review, that there may be no agenda items for action in February unless the planning commission wants to take up some different topics.
So do we need to decide scheduling and work session versus regular meeting now? Or can that be done pending items that will come across?
It's certainly worth the discussion. And that discussion can happen anytime between now and the next meeting as to the timing of when it
Okay,
happens.
it doesn't have to be done in meeting format. Okay.
I don't believe so. One of the things that is helpful is to have direction if there are other topics that the planning commission wants to bring up. I know that around the first of the year, we typically try to do a refresher on our meeting procedures, reviews and things of that nature. So that's what staff was thinking about. I discussed that with Chairman Sarter a while back, and we didn't put it on tonight's agenda because there was another item that was maybe going to make this meeting that didn't. It doesn't look like it's likely to make the February meeting either. So February might be a little bit light. It might be a good time to have that discussion, as well as anything else that the planning commission would like to discuss. And there's always an opportunity to bring that in.
Okay. Do you all, any objections to just keeping it a regular 6:30 meeting? And if there are no agenda items, we just go into a refresher with Dan. Okay.
I did have one question in this, are we gonna get some clarification if there's a subject matter that we have to recuse? Cannot participate in what the policy is, because some discussion was you have to sit in the audience, and I've also heard discussions that you need to physically leave the room. Can we get some clarification on what that might be moving forward? Because it's been a little vague, both here and the board.
Yeah, and certainly we can add that to our topics to have, the town attorney, Dan Sapienza, share some guidance on that. I'm also aware that the board of trustees is also looking at, policies, meeting procedures and guidelines and operating procedures. So typically those, what the board of trustees decide has a kind of trickle down effect across other boards and commissions. So it's definitely a topic of conversation that needs some further clarification. So we'll definitely put that on the radar to discuss.
Okay, thank you.
And, that kind of does fall into, I had a question on, we have a topic that we want to talk about, the process of that and time frame too, of bringing that up, to you, Cody, because, I want to make sure that, you're not blindsided, by something. And what, I know that we're talking about a process of like, if we add, we're wanting to talk to the group, do we add it, how can we add it to an agenda? Is it just like an announcements and then we talk about it and say yes? So what are those processes?
So there's not a defined policy or process on how to do that typically, and the question doesn't come up very often, but it's certainly something that can in the future. So it's definitely worthy to include that in the overall policy bylaws conversation for the planning commission. I know that the town attorney wants to weigh in on those things, and he is working on the board of trustees stuff first. So there's definitely some room to improve that process. As it stands currently, typically staff takes direction from the planning commission as a whole. We can certainly always add items on the agenda. Typically, when we put an item on the agenda, it comes with a staff report, whether it's a work session or an action item. We typically prepare a staff report, and it's published as part of the public agenda so that the public who's looking at it knows, well, what are they talking about and what's the background for it. Staff loves the opportunity to put those staff reports together, and even if it's just a baseline information. So we do need a little bit of lead time to prepare those things. But that being said, I think that there's an opportunity to work with the director or the chair to bring those items to our attention. As long as staff has adequate time to put something together for the agenda and report, then we'll probably put that on the agenda.
Well, we had a question, or at least I were having a discussion. And we were kind of going back and forth about our zoning map. And some of our, we turned it in to the, we'd all voted on it. Okay. I still have some questions about the public. And the public being the sewer treatment plant. Some of our ponds that aren't public. I'm still just having a hard time understanding this public. And I know we passed it. And we didn't make changes on it because that wasn't what we were doing. We were trying to clean up the zoning at that point. So that was kind of an item that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't know at what point or where it was acceptable to talk about that.
Well, and I'll just add, so Linda and we've only talked amongst ourselves about this because of sunshine law, so we couldn't get any input from anyone else, and it's something that we wanted to kind of discuss further. We both did some research on other municipalities and how they address those same property types to try to be more informed and understand how it should be. And so, and in the course of doing that, discovering that the zoning map that we approved to forward to the board of trustees isn't even consistent. So like we have one detention pond that's zoned R3 and another that's zoned public, and that doesn't, that kind of goes against what we were trying to do with the zoning map in the first place. And so we were hoping that we could plan to talk about it further at the next meeting so that Cody has a chance to prepare something to make it more informed if you guys are up for that.
Quick, so question on, I don't know, is it an inconsistency when one detention facility is labeled as public and another one is R3? If that detention facility is maintained, I don't know if this is true anywhere in town, is maintained or mowed, whatever, by, let's say, an HOA, is that what makes the difference, like why one facility might be zoned differently than another. I don't know, I was just thinking about that as you were saying it, so I was just curious.
Just off the cuff, I think that staff's recommendation on that is that I have not had a chance to dig into the topic to know how many different nuanced scenarios there are with the public zone properties and detention ponds. I think there are instances in town where there are some that are public owned, town owned, there are some that are privately owned, there are some that are just detention ponds, and there are some that are detention ponds plus park and recreational facilities. Viewpoint Park has a large field that's part of the detention, but it's also a ball field. There's soccer goals, football posts, and basketball court and other things. So I haven't done that analysis townwide to look at those different scenarios to be able to answer the question on, what's the kind of unifying theme. I think that would be part of the discussion, right? And I think it's a good discussion for the planning commission to have.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question that we don't get into too.
Right, well, so what I was gonna offer is that one of the things we were trying to do is in the spirit of efficiency. If we could talk about that next meeting, so that if we want to amend that map before the trustees vote, then we're not recreating the wheel every time, and we can really, just work through
Fair
that.
question.
Or maybe we should have the meeting once he has his opportunity to look at all this.
That's what I was gonna suggest, give staff
Then it's
the
already done.
February meeting to do the
Right,
research,
exactly.
clear everything up, and then stick it on the agenda in February to at least continue discussion regarding the public zoning.
Yeah, and we can certainly do that. Appreciate the opportunity for staff to be able to do a little bit of research into those different scenarios. And I also heard that bringing this up in the context of the zoning map updates that we're currently in the process of. Just to kind of recap where we're at in that procedure. This planning commission did make a recommendation on the official zoning map updates. To be forwarded to the Board of Trustees. That hasn't happened at the Board of Trustees yet. We presented just a status update of where things were at in December, and the Board of Trustees requested to have a work session. I think that's tentatively scheduled for end of this month, January 24th, subject to the Board of Trustees agenda calendar. But suffice it to say, I think that there's an opportunity to, during the Planning Commission's February meeting, if that discussion takes place, there'll still be an opportunity to change or modify a recommendation for the Board of Trustees if that's desirable. So I think there's plenty of time to do this in the context of the official zone map updates. We'll just make sure we include in the work session with the Board of Trustees if there's an additional topic the planning commission is taking a look at.
That's perfect.
I just love how Cody words that. I appreciate the opportunity to review and look over all these.
I also
Instead of you guys.
Right, for being open-minded to two ladies that are just trying to figure something out and do things the right way the first time.
Well, the inconsistency there would be personally, that's a little switch with me. If there's a reason that we do need to change them, or if there's a reason that we're doing things differently here than best practices or the majority of other municipalities out there, then we should take a look at
Right.
And I think with the public, we kind of looked at it, and then when we were going to our work sessions, we really kind of zoned in downtown district, or, this section, so. And we were kind of doing it in blocks versus this whole, this is all kind of all over.
And I agree with that, Commissioner Knack, and I also acknowledge that, Commissioner Cholet also brought that topic up in one of the planning commission's prior work sessions. I think it's a good topic. I apologize if it was staff that said, I recall, and I didn't go back and review the videos, but I recall responding that the zone map update was to clean up things that the land use code affected, and that wasn't affected. If that stifled the conversation, I apologize, that wasn't my intent. It's certainly a good topic. I think it just kind of we focused in very closely on what do we have to do, and that's as far as it got on the public piece. So I think it's a great topic to bring up and discuss further.
it. Perfect February agenda.
Awesome, thanks.
Right back.
Okay, any other announcements? before we close up?
Just because the question came up earlier tonight, there is a vacancy on the planning commission. Staff will be in the process of advertising that. We haven't advertised it yet. One of the reasons being that the vacancy is for a term that expires in April. And so appointing someone for a meeting or two and then making them reapply doesn't feel right. So I think the discussion was simply to advertise that for a full term for that process and appoint them new people. So that's the direction that staff has been working towards to fill the vacancy on the planning commission.
That makes a lot of sense considering we have all the members here that are usually always here. A couple of years ago, that was the case.
And we have.
We had to take anybody we could.
I agree. And a lot has changed in terms of having volunteers in the community. It's really great to see that support from all of us.
So we offered to.
Okay, anything else? All right, perfect. Adjourned.
Didn't miss anything in the national championship game. I think they're 2-7. It's 34. Georgia, yeah.